Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jeannie and today I'll be showing you how to do a dip powder mani using the pour over method. I'll be using Virgo Gem for today's mani, and a huge thank you to Virgo Gem for sending me some of their newest colors from some of their newest collections. So these two right here are from the newest neutrals release, and then we've got three here at the bottom from the recent fall release. So let me get into showing you these colors. Since I'm using Virgo Gem powders, I figured I'd go ahead and make it an all Virgo Gem mani. So I'm using their peel base, which for this peel base, it works really well. I find it very similar to UNT, except for the fact that it does make my first layer of dip base dry faster, and it is a little bit thinner than the UNT. So you can see the consistency here. It is a little more watery, but it works really well, and I love using it. So one of the things I found is I always do 2 full layers of peel base on my nails, and then to avoid my first layer of dip base drying too quickly on me, I do, once the 2 layers are dry, I apply a layer of gel base to my nails. I cure it for 30 seconds, wipe off the tacky layer, and then I'm ready to go. And that way I don't have to wait for a layer of dip base to dry on top of waiting for the peel base to dry. I'm impatient enough as it is waiting for my peel base to dry, so the greatest hack for me was using gel base before I go in with my dip. So I'll also be using Virgo Gem dip liquids, and these are her older bottles. So I think quite a while ago now, she replaced these opaque bottles with clear bottles, but I've been hoarding these older bottles because for me, that's my preference. Like, I like that for the clear bottles, you can see how much liquid you have, but light does get through them, so they could go bad quicker. So I prefer personally the opaque bottles. I was really drawn to fall foliage, so I decided to pair it with Grateful, and then I decided to also use an older color, Wine Knot, which is a beautiful wine color. Now for the pour over, I'm going to be using my Dipped in Chaos from Chaos Concepts, and I do have one for each kind of dip powder, and then I've got the G here for glitter, which I just cured on with some white gel polish. So these are really great because they are flexible, but they're not flimsy. So I can pick them up with dip powder and they're not going to be super thin like the silicone liners, and powders do not stick to them. And you can see here, they kind of have that incline. So they're also really good for French manis as well. These are some of my favorites to use and eliminate the need for cupcake liners. I'll be starting with my lightest solid first to avoid contamination. So regardless of the method I use, whether it's dipping or pouring over, I always want to start with my lightest solid, moving on to the darker and then the shimmers and the glitters. So for this process, it's going to be about the same. So I'm going to apply a thin, even layer of dip base to my entire nail, which I'll apply Grateful to my ring finger and my pinky. And then once I've got that dip base on, I will pour over the powder into my Dipped in Chaos to catch that. So the thing about pour over method is you do get thinner layers of dip powder with this method. The other benefit of using the pour over method is that you avoid any ledges or wrinkling, because when you apply your dip base, it's wet, and then you could move it when you dip your finger into the jar, causing that wrinkle. So you won't get that with pour over method. So you can see here, I had to pour over a second time because there was still a little bit of wet dip base. So you may have to do that as well because you're catching less powder, which also causes those thinner layers. Depending on your liquid and your dip powder that you're using, you may need to do an additional layer or two when you're doing the pour over method because you get thinner layers. So if you're using a thinner dip liquid or a thinner dip powder, you may need other additional layers or else it'll be too thin. And if your dip powder is too thin, you could experience cracking. So you just want to be cognizant of that as well. Because I'm wearing peel base and I don't expect to wear this mani for more than a couple days at most, I'm going to do my normal process of 2 dips and then a cap in clear. While I continue dipping, let's talk a little bit more about the pour over method. So for me personally, that's not my preferred method because I don't know why. I just find something really satisfying about dipping my finger into the jar and I enjoy that. But I do understand why some people prefer the pour over method because they like the thinner layers, as well as it can be really frustrating when you work hard on a mani and you get like a wrinkle or a ledge because your dip base has moved as you're dipping your finger into the powder. So I get it, but I'd rather take that risk just because I find that process more satisfying. If you're using gel liquids instead of dip liquids to do your mani because you get dip flu or you prefer gel or for whatever reason, I definitely highly recommend using pour over method rather than dipping in. Because your gel base does not dry until you cure it in the lamp, it stays very wet, and so you're almost guaranteed to get your wrinkling or ledges if you do dip your gel base into your dip powder. I just want to show you here how easy it is to pour back your powder after you're done. So I kind of gently pinch the end of the dipped in chaos and just use that as a funnel to pour my powder back in. So I'll tap it to get off the excess powder, and then I'll just take my brush and just wipe it away. It's that easy. So moving on to the next color, I'm going to use Wine Knot and just look at how beautiful this color is. So on to the next benefit of pour over method. When you're using darker colors, there is a good chance that you could stain your skin with darker colors. So you have less staining when you pour over with darker colors. And that's because when you're dipping your finger in, you're kind of picking up those darker pigments of that powder. Whereas if you're pouring over, the pigments aren't really sticking, they're just kind of falling. So you may get a little bit of staining still, but not anything like you would if you dipped your finger into the darker color. Having said that, I just want to put a disclaimer out there that I haven't tried dipping with Wine Knot, so I don't know if it actually stains the skin. So I just want to put that out there because not all dark colors stain. I'm just saying if a dark color stains, pour over method can help with that. And total side note, look at how velvety gorgeous this color is. I think it would look really beautiful matte. I did use glossy top coat for this, but I'm kind of regretting it because I think it would just look so gorgeous in a matte finish. And what you see here is I turned my nail because I want to make sure I'm getting all my sidewalls and covering my entire nail. So I just turned my thumb and poured over to that other side of it just to make sure I'm covering it all. And of course, I had a little bit of wet dip base still, so I just had to pour over a little extra just to absorb that. I started to dust off my excess powder to go in with my second layer, and I didn't realize the dip base on my thumb was still wet. So I just dipped it back in the dip powder, hoping that it was wet enough to pick up a little bit more of that powder, just so it's not so uneven. So don't be like me and be impatient. Make sure your dip base is dry, fully dry, before you dust off. So as far as using the pour over method, you don't have to have the dipped in chaos, although I highly recommend it because it is reusable and it's easy to clean. So if it gets too dirty, I can just wash it out with some warm soap and water and then it's ready to use again. But you don't have to use that. You can use a cupcake liner, you can use a coffee filter, even a paper plate. So there are other options you can use. I just always prefer the reusable option, and I don't prefer silicone cupcake liners because the powders and the glitters do stick to it and it is a nightmare to clean out. Now that I'm done with my solids, I'm going to go ahead and cap that in clear, but I'm only going to do my pinky and my thumb because those fingers are done, but I'm going to leave my index and my ring fingers uncapped because those are going to have a glitter ombre on them. But I'm going to go ahead and do my pinky and thumb because I don't want to contaminate them with glitter. So you do see here, I do have a little bit of staining on my dip base brush from the wine color. So I'm just wiping it off on a lint-free wipe, and you can see here it's clean. So I just wanted to make sure that I didn't have any of that color transfer onto my nude nail. All right, now that I have my solid nails activated, we're going to move into my glitter and just look at how beautiful fall foliage is. As soon as I opened the jar, I was immediately drawn to it and I knew that I had to use it because it's just got such beautiful colors in there. It's got like the hex glitters and all different colors. So there's wine in there, which is kind of why I pulled in wine knot, as well as some shards of some things, some iridescent colors. It's just so beautiful. But I am going to do my normal chunky glitter method for this. So my first layer is going to be pour over. And the reason I do pour over for my first layer of chunky glitters is because I want to catch less of the chunky glitters and more of the acrylic powder, the finer glitters, the shimmers, just because I want to avoid any bulkiness. So once I pour that over, you can see me kind of patting down any glitters that may be sticking up. And what you see here is me cleaning up the shape as well. So I kind of tuck in any of those glitters that may kind of stick out and affect my shape, just to make sure, you know, I have less work to do when I'm filing and shaping after I'm done with my layers of dip powder. And this stupid glitter here just drove me nuts because a corner of it was stuck to my nail, but the rest of it was hanging off on my cuticle, and I was just too lazy to get a pair of tweezers. So don't do like I did. Just get a pair of tweezers and pry it off because it'll just save you less filing in the end. So moving on to my second layer of chunky glitters, I am actually not going to pour over, and that's because I want this to be a thicker layer that picks up more of those chunky glitters. So what I did is I poured my entire jar of the glitter into my Dipped in Chaos, and I'm shaking it here to bring more of the chunkier glitters to the surface because I want to pick up as many as possible so I can kind of do either less or no glitter placements. And spoiler alert, you'll see with this glitter, I didn't have to do any glitter placement. So that's always a plus. So once I laid my finger into that glitter, I had enough coverage of the chunkies, the finer glitters, the smaller glitters, where I didn't have to do any sort of placement. Not having to do any glitter placement saves so much time for me because I just get really picky and it takes me forever because I start staring at my nail and wanting to do more and I just never know when to stop. So I always appreciate the glitters that have good enough coverage to where I don't have to do that. So for my index and ring finger, I'm going to do a glitter ombre, and I'll be using this Wet n Wild eyeshadow brush that I get on Amazon, which I'll leave linked down below. So I'm just going to apply a layer of dip base to about 3/4 of my nail. I could do my entire nail. I don't know, I just decided to do 3/4 because it's just going to be a glitter ombre to a little past half my nail. So I'm tilting my nail down, and I'm using the tap method. So I'm dipping my eyeshadow brush into the glitter, and I'm just tapping the glitter lightly onto my nail so that I don't get too much. And you can see me rotating my nail from side to side because I want to make sure my sidewalls are being covered as well. So I do a little bit of glitter placement because, you know, like I said, you don't pick up many chunkies with the pour over method, but I'm not really going to show you that because that's not really the point of the video. So I'm going to do the same thing with my index finger, but I did want to show you this because this is like the beauty of this glitter is it just looks so different depending on what color you pair it with. So this glitter just looks so different against Grateful, which is the nude color, than it does against Wine Knot, and it just shows the true beauty of this glitter. It's amazing. I love it. I went ahead and activated and filed and buffed off camera, so now I'm done and back for my favorite part, the dip top coat. So for the dip top coat, I'm going to apply one final thin layer of activator to all my nails. I'm going to let that dry for 2 minutes, and then we will go in with the top coat. And I always forget how much I love the Virgo Gem dip top coat. It has got such a beautiful shine to it. For my first layer of dip top coat, I'm just doing 2 to 3 really quick swipes on each nail and then wiping on a lint-free wipe in between each nail before returning to the bottle. You always want to make sure you're not lingering on the nail for your first layer because if there is leftover activator, you could harden your brush and contaminate your whole layer, your whole bottle of dip top coat. Once you're done with all the fingers and your top coat has started to kind of wrinkle and look dull, that's when you know you're ready for your second layer. And that's when you can really take your time and make sure you're capping your free edges. Capping your free edges is really important, especially when you're wearing peel base, because that can help with longer wear time of your mani. I'm going to finish off my mani with my Candy Skincare whipped oil, and I am a guest ambassador for Candy Skincare, so you can use my discount code Jeannie15 to save 15% off your orders. If you haven't tried this whipped oil, it is amazing and so hydrating. A little bit goes a long way because it is a bit greasier, so I don't use it a lot on my hands. But I just got this scent in. It's called Everything Nice, and it's a previous sub bag scent, and I am obsessed with it. So of course I have to use it on everything because it's so good. But I actually keep a couple of tubs of the whipped oil in my bathroom. So I use it all over my body and my legs every time I'm done with my shower, and it really helps rehydrate my skin. And here's the finished look. What do you think? I am still really obsessed with this glitter. I just think it's so gorgeous. And it's really crazy to me how different this glitter looks against the nude color versus the wine color. It just looks so different, and it just brings out different colors of the glitter depending on what you pair it with. So I just really love the way it turned out. I will say, I think Grateful is probably a little too peachy for my skin tone, but I still think it's a really beautiful color. It wouldn't stop me from using it. I would just say it's just probably a little too light for my skin tone, but I know it's getting colder, so I'll probably get paler as the winter comes. Thank you again to Virgo and Gem for sending me over these beautiful colors to use. I hope this was helpful, and if it was, I would appreciate if you give this video a thumbs up. It lets me know to continue creating content like this, and it also helps YouTube recommend me to others. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I upload content every Monday and Thursday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, I appreciate you watching. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.